The night breeze, carrying the city's distinctive scent of gasoline mixed with rain, swept across the rooftop terrace of the skyscraper. The towering glass curtain walls reflected the cold glow of the neon lights, resembling a layer of shattered silver frost. She stood there, her shoulders trembling slightly, her fingers clenched tightly around the hem of her evening gown. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, each beat like someone drumming inside her chest, leaving her almost unable to breathe. "I can't have children." Elara's voice was so low, it was nearly carried away by the wind, yet it still reached his ears clearly. The man across from her, Alex von Drak, the vampire king who had ruled the dark underground empire for 300 years, fell silent for a moment, then he smiled. That smile carried the lazy, dangerous air of a predator. His crimson eyes glowed faintly in the night, like two pools of burning blood. His sharp fangs were slightly exposed, and his deep voice slid over her skin like aged red wine. "I have enough for both of us." The words struck her like a bolt of lightning, hitting her right in the heart. Elara jerked her head up, locking eyes with those blood-red orbs that seemed capable of devouring her soul. Taboo, fear, shame, and a tremor she'd been desperately suppressing surged through her body like an electric current. Her breathing became erratic. Her legs went weak, and she could barely stand. Her name was Elara, the last blood vessel, chosen by prophecy in the human world. From childhood, the clan elders had told her in cold, matter-of-fact tones, "You will never bear children in this lifetime. Any man who attempts to impregnate you will pay a terrible price." For 28 years, she had lived like a vial of poison, its fate sealed long before she was born. Love, marriage, children, the happiness ordinary women took for granted was, to her, nothing but a thorny illusion. Touch it, and it would tear her flesh to shreds. Tonight, she was supposed to be offered as a sacrifice to this king who controlled the city's underground forces, all to appease the vampire clan's wrath against the human business empire. Everyone was waiting to see her end, to be toyed with, discarded, and drained of her blood. But no one could have imagined that this legendary, cold-hearted, eternal king would use such a domineering yet suggestive phrase to tear down all her defenses in an instant. "Why?" Elara's voice trembled, her throat feeling as if it had been scorched by fire. "You know full well I can't give you anything. I can't even give you the most basic things a woman is supposed to offer." Alex closed in step by step, his black leather shoes striking the rain-soaked marble terrace with a heavy rhythmic thud. His black trench coat billowed in the night breeze, like a giant pair of wings formed from the darkness. His towering figure completely enveloped her. His icy fingers lifted her chin with force yet gentleness, leaving her nowhere to hide. "Who says you can't give anything?" His breath carried a faint, sweet scent of blood, brushing against the corner of her lips. His voice was so low and hoarse it seemed almost liquid. "Little one, you harbor something within you that is more precious and more deadly than the ability to bear children. And I, for my part, have long grown weary of those puppets who can do nothing but bear children." Elara's heart clenched in pain. Over the years, she had heard too much pity, contempt, and vicious mockery. But in the eyes of the man before her, there was not a trace of disappointment, only raw desire, bottomless fascination, and a certain obsession that was even more dangerous and all-consuming. In the distance, the city's skyscrapers were ablaze with lights, the hum of traffic serving as a low, constant backdrop. A terrifying prophecy passed down through her clan for millennia, flashed through Elara's mind. When the barren bloodline meets the eternal king, the curse will fully awaken, and darkness will devour all, or bring new life. She didn't know if what lay ahead was redemption, or a deeper, more cruel abyss. Alex's thumb gently traced her slightly trembling lower lip. The icy touch set her skin ablaze. "Starting tonight, you are mine," he said, enunciating each word as if making the most solemn vow. "As for the child, I have plenty of ways and plenty of patience. I'll make you understand that some things are far more unbreakable and far more addictive than blood ties. The night wind suddenly picked up, whipping her long hair into a frenzy as it tangled around his slender fingers. Elara closed her eyes, her heart pounding so hard it felt as though it might burst. In that moment, she could not tell whether the turmoil in her chest was fear or a near desperate tremor of longing to be completely claimed by him. This was the cruelest yet most alluring opening act of fate. It taught us that when a woman is utterly stripped of her most basic rights by the world, a truly powerful man does not crush her with pity, but instead drags her into a brand new dark world belonging solely to them, through absolute dominance, mysterious promises, and a possession bordering on predation. Her story has only just begun. Behind the Vampire King's smile lie the earth, shattering conspiracies of a modern dark empire, the cruel manipulation of ancient prophecies, and a forbidden love destined to burn everything to the ground, yet one that might also bring redemption. Elara's memories surfaced bit by bit, like old wounds washed clean by rain, carrying a scent of rust. She was born into an ancient family of the human upper class, known as the Thorn Consortium. On the surface, this family controlled the city's most powerful financial and technological empires, but behind the scenes, they had been responsible for generations for maintaining a fragile balance with the underground vampire factions. The family elders would always gather in the heavily guarded boardroom on the top floor, dressed in tailored suits and seated around a long table, repeating that damned prophecy in cold, precise tones. The vessel of blood shall appear. She cannot bear children, yet she can awaken the eternal king. Curse and rebirth hang by a single thought. Whoever controls her controls the future of both worlds. For as long as she could remember, everyone's gaze toward her had been a mixture of pity, fear, and calculation. While other heiresses from wealthy families attended high society balls at 18, fantasizing about arranged marriages, heirs, and perfect lives. What about her? At 12, she had secretly fallen for a young man from a collateral branch of the family. As a result, after a private rendezvous, the boy suddenly suffered a heart attack and nearly died in the hospital. The family immediately isolated her in a private estate in the suburbs, where meals were delivered daily by a designated person, with drugs secretly added to suppress her magical power. Those drugs caused her to have nightmares all night long, dreams filled with blood, screams, and the sneering faces of the board of directors. She had once tried to escape at the age of 19. She forged an identity and fled to another city, hoping to live an ordinary life. But just 3 days after settling in, her host collapsed from a mysterious blood disorder. The family security team dragged her back and beat her mercilessly in the basement. As they struck her, the elders said, "You are the family's poison, Elara. Your very existence is a political weapon. You are destined for loneliness. This is to protect the entire conglomerate." The pain of being treated as a pawn by her own family felt like an icy thorn, piercing deep into her very marrow. She learned to seal her heart completely, remaining on high alert against any hint of tenderness. But tonight, when Alex said, "I have enough," in that domineering tone, a crack suddenly appeared in that thick shell of ice. What surged out through the fissure was a longing and fear she dared not even look at herself. And Alex von Drak, the king who had ruled the dark underground empire for 300 years, his situation was far more perilous than Elara could have imagined. On the surface, the modern metropolis glitters with prosperity, but beneath it lies a battlefield where various factions vie for power. The vampire nobility has split into several major factions. The Pureblood Conservatives insist on maintaining the purity of their lineage, fearing that human genes will dilute their power. The new generation advocates intermarriage with human elites to expand their commercial influence. And lurking in the shadows are the radicals, who seek to completely overthrow the existing order and launch the Blood Night Purge. A palace coup 300 years ago brought Alex to the throne, but he has been secretly resisting the Pureblood Purification Plan, pushed by the nobles. Using ancient magic and modern biotechnology, they have created a fertility curse targeting specific human bloodlines, aiming to control the number of heirs and maintain the concentration of power. The Silver Thorn Consortium is the key pawn on the human side in this conspiracy. While ostensibly providing financial and technical support, they secretly hope to use the curse to weaken Alex's rule, thereby securing higher positions for their family in both worlds. In the castle, which is actually the building at the city center that appears to be a luxury hotel on the surface, but houses a vast palace underground, a secret chamber on the lowest level holds countless encrypted scrolls and data drives. Among them, a prophecy archive secured with a combination of dragon blood and quantum encryption clearly states, "Only when a barren vessel truly unites with the eternal king will the curse fully manifest." Either the two races would tear apart completely, sparking open war, or they would shatter the millennia, old shackles of bloodline, ushering in a new balance of power. Alex had seen too many women over the years. Some coveted his wealth and power, others were captivated by his ageless appearance. Every single one was eager to bear him an heir who could inherit the empire. But in his eyes, those women were nothing more than hollow bargaining chips. He had grown weary of their false obedience and scheming, until Elara was thrust before him as a tribute. When she trembled as she uttered the words, "I cannot bear children," there was not a trace of political calculation in her eyes, only raw pain and self-loathing. In that moment, his long-dormant heart was struck with a jolt. He had laughed so ostentatiously on purpose, just to see the shock and panic in her eyes. He wanted her to know that, to him, she was not poison, nor a pawn cast aside by her family, but a one-of-a-kind treasure worth protecting with his entire empire. Elara stood on the terrace, the night breeze ruffling her long hair. She did not know that, in the shadows of the city's skyscrapers, countless pairs of eyes were watching everything closely. The elders of the Silver Thorn Consortium, the dissenting nobles of the vampire Pureblood faction, and even the prophecy manipulators lurking within the government and media, all were waiting to see the outcome of this union. They wanted to witness whether this forbidden encounter would ignite the flames of destruction for both empires, or become the key to completely rewriting the balance of power. Alex suddenly leaned down and whispered in her ear, in a voice only the two of them could hear, "Don't be afraid, little one. I've waited 300 years just for a woman who dares to tell me I have nothing to offer. Those aristocratic conspiracies and bloodline struggles are nothing to me." Those words felt like a scorching branding iron, seared directly into Elara's heart. She snapped her eyes open, meeting his crimson gaze. There was no pity in them, only an intense possessiveness and a tenderness bordering on madness. Her fingertips couldn't help but gently grasp the hem of his trench coat, like a drowning person clinging to a last straw. Fate is never gentle. It always prefers to bind two people who should be worlds apart in the cruelest ways. This only proves that when a woman is treated as a political pawn by her own family and the entire high society, stripped of all so-called value, what can truly save her is never sympathy, but someone willing to use all their strength, patience, and power to embrace her most shattered, most worthless parts. The night grew deeper, and the city lights flickered through the rain. Elara did not know what kind of clandestine battles among the elite or political whirlpools awaited her, but in that moment she felt her heart beat for the first time, no longer driven solely by fear, but with a secret frantic throb as if she were finally truly seen. Once Alex led Elara into that building, which looked like a luxury hotel on the outside, but was an underground palace within. Everything seemed to shift into high gear. The corridors were lined with thick, deep red carpets that completely swallowed their footsteps, leaving only the sound of their intertwined breaths. She followed behind him, each step feeling like walking on thin ice, her heart racing wildly. The forceful declaration from the terrace moments ago still echoed in her ears. But reality quickly shattered that fleeting sweetness. Early the next morning, the elders of the Thorn Consortium initiated a video call. On the screen, her father's well-preserved yet perpetually cold and hard face filled the entire frame, with several board members in crisp suits seated behind him. Elara, you have completed the first step of your mission. Remember, your body is a bargaining chip in the family's negotiations with the Dark Empire. Don't get emotionally involved. It will only destroy us all. Elara's hand trembled as she held the phone. She wanted to argue to say she wasn't a pawn, but the words died on her lips. Alex stood not far away, leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window and smoking a cigar. His crimson eyes swept over her casually, as if able to see through all her weaknesses. After hanging up, she turned to go back to her room, but he pulled her into his embrace. His icy chest pressed against her back. The chill made her shiver, yet strangely, it gave her a sense of security. "What are you afraid of, little one?" His voice was low, his lips almost touching her earlobe. "Are you afraid of me, or afraid that you actually want to stay?" Elara pushed him hard, but couldn't budge him. Those arms were as firm as iron bands, yet didn't hurt her in the slightest. "I'm afraid this is all a transaction. You need me to break the curse, and I need to trade myself for my family's safety. Between us, it's been nothing but exploitation from the very beginning." Alex gave a low chuckle and turned her to face him. His towering frame pinned her against the wall, his crimson eyes burning with a flame that brooked no refusal. "Exploitation. If it were just exploitation, I would have had you lying on a dissection table in the lab long ago, instead of holding you in my arms in bed." His fingers glided over her collarbone. The icy touch sent a fine shiver through her skin. "What I, Alex, have ever wanted is not just a tool for bearing children. What I want is you, the woman who dared to say, 'I can't have children' in front of everyone, and still stood tall." In that moment, Elara nearly shed a tear. Over the years, she had heard too many noble, sounding lies, but never had anyone told her in such a domineering and direct way. "You are worth possessing." Her heart felt as if it had been torn open. Fear, longing, shame, and a flutter of excitement swirled together, choking her until she could barely breathe. But the calm lasted less than 3 days. On the third night, an alarm suddenly rang out through the palace. Pureblood conservative nobles burst in with armed guards, led by Alex's cousin Victor, a man with a sinister look and boundless ambition. He looked at Elara with a cold smile. "Your Majesty, are you truly willing to sacrifice the purity of the Empire's bloodline for a barren human waste? The Council of Elders has already passed a resolution. If you insist on making her your queen, we will activate the Blood Knight Pact and strip you of your right to rule." The tension in the air reached a fever pitch. Elara stood behind Alex, her fingertips ice cold. She could feel the stares of the vampire nobles in the room, cutting into her skin like knives, some filled with loathing, others with mockery, and still others with raw, unmasked, murderous intent. Victor even flung a data report onto the table right then and there, detailing evidence of how her family's Thorn Corporation had secretly funded the Pureblood Purification Project over the years. "Look, Your Majesty, she has been a trap from the moment she was born. Her family intends to use her to destroy you. Yet you shield her behind you." Elara's heart sank. She turned to look at Alex, hoping to find a hint of wavering in his expression. But he merely smiled faintly, reached out to pull her in front of him, and openly held her in his arms. "Victor, do you think I'm unaware of the underhanded schemes you've been plotting behind the scenes all these years? Using modern genetic technology to amplify the curse, rendering more human women infertile, all to preserve your ridiculous aristocratic privileges. Elara is not a trap. She is the key to unlocking our decaying empire." He leaned down and kissed her forehead, right in front of everyone. That kiss was icy, yet it carried an unquestionable declaration. Elara's body stiffened for a moment, then a wave of heat surged to her eyes. In that instant, she understood, no matter how many conspiracies lurked outside, at least this man was on her side right now. But that realization only made her more afraid. If even he were to lose everything because of her, wouldn't she once again become the source of disaster? That night, the tension escalated into a full-blown confrontation. Victor's men had released a potent curse potion targeting Elara's bloodline into the underground laboratory. Elara awoke in excruciating pain, her entire body feeling as if it were on fire, her abdomen cramping so violently that she curled into a ball. Alex rushed in, held her in his arms, and fed her his own blood. The cold blood, with its intense sweet salty taste, slid down her throat. She coughed and cried. "Why, I can't give you anything yet. You still protect me like this. Let me go. I'll only drag you down." Alex's eyes were so red, they seemed ready to bleed. He held her trembling body tightly, his voice hoarse and quivering. "Shut up, little one. Do you know what I've been waiting for these past 300 years? I've been waiting for a woman worth risking my entire throne for. So what if you can't bear children? I have enough blood, enough power, and enough ways to create our own offspring. Those aristocratic intrigues and political struggles are nothing to me. All I want is for you to live and stay by my side." Elara buried her face in his chest, her tears soaking his shirt. In that moment, every defense she'd built within herself crumbled completely. She hated her own helplessness, hated her family for using her as a weapon, and hated this world even more for always defining a woman's worth by her ability to bear children. But Alex's embrace was so steadfast that for the first time, a nearly maddening thought took root in her. Perhaps she could try to believe, just once, that someone truly didn't care about those so-called flaws. The conflict was far from over. The next day, the Silver Thorn Consortium also tore off the mask. Her father personally led a group to the palace, demanding that Elara be taken away for renegotiation. The two factions faced off in the hotel lobby, the tension, a tangled web of firearms and magic, making the air almost freeze. Elara stood in the middle, her heart writhing in agony as she watched both sides draw their swords and bows for her sake. Suddenly she rushed forward and shouted, "Enough! Neither of you is allowed to use me as a bargaining chip anymore. If my existence only brings war, then I'd rather die right here." Her voice was choked with tears, yet unyieldingly firm. A flicker of pity crossed Alex's eyes, quickly giving way to a deeper sense of possessiveness. He declared on the spot, "From this day forward, Elara is my queen. Anyone who dares lay a hand on her will be at war with the entire Dark Empire." The words struck like a sledgehammer, silencing both sides for a moment. That night, by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the bedroom, Alex pinned her beneath him, his movements fierce yet tinged with rare tenderness. Elara dug her fingers into his shoulders as her senses were pushed to the limit. His icy skin, his scorching breath, their entwined gasps, and the dangerous shadows cast by the city's neon lights outside the window. At the peak of her ecstasy, she couldn't help but cry out, I'm afraid that one day you'll regret this too." He kissed her tears away and growled, "I, Alex, never regret anything. I'll only bind you tighter until you believe completely that you are my everything." The tug of fate is always cruel. It uses family conspiracies, political betrayals, and physical pain to drive people to the brink of collapse. Yet it is precisely in this blazing inferno that we see clearly. True love is not pity or charity, but someone willing to stand against the entire world for you, healing your deepest wounds with fierce possession and unwavering devotion. This is the most addictive aspect of a forbidden love. It promises no perfection, yet it promises that no matter how dark the night, someone will burn alongside you. Elara didn't know how long this clandestine battle among the elite and the racial struggle would last, but in that moment her heart truly opened to this vampire king for the first time. Outside, a storm was brewing. Inside, it was the most intense entanglement in their private world. When Elara awoke, The entire underground palace was in chaos. The shrill wail of alarms echoed through the metal corridors, mingling with distant gunfire and the low rumble of magical explosions. She struggled to sit up, a dull ache still lingering in her abdomen from the curse that had been reinforced the night before. Alex was nowhere to be found. Only a brief note in his handwriting lay on the nightstand. "Stay here, I'll be back soon. Remember, you are mine." Her heart sank as she immediately realized something was terribly wrong. She pushed open the door to find the hallway already crowded with loyal guards, their expressions uncharacteristically grave. Before she could ask a question, a maid rushed over and whispered, "Your Majesty, the Pureblood faction has joined forces with some renegade elders from the Thorn Consortium, as well as a mole within the human government. They have launched a full-scale assault and are now advancing on the central control room. Victor has declared that if His Majesty does not depose you immediately, they will detonate the prophecy device, causing the city's bloodline curse to spiral completely out of control." Elara's blood ran cold. She knew what that meant. Thousands of women would lose their fertility forever. The war between the two races would be fully exposed, and the city would plunge into an abyss of blood and fire. And all of this was because of her. She ignored the warnings, threw on her coat, and rushed out. The corridors were littered with the aftermath of battle. Shattered glass and the faint scent of blood assaulted her senses. Her heart pounded so hard it felt as though it would burst from her chest. As she ran, she asked herself over and over again, "Why does every time I get close to happiness, it turn into a disaster? Am I really destined to be a poison for the rest of my life?" When she finally reached the central control room, the scene before her nearly took her breath away. Alex stood before a massive holographic projection of the prophecy, her black trench coat splattered with blood, her crimson eyes burning with fury. Across from her, Victor and her father stood side by side, backed by dozens of heavily armed elite soldiers. Thick magical particles hung in the air, like countless tiny blades scraping against her skin. "Elara, you harbinger of doom." Her father's voice was laced with hatred. "From the very beginning, we raised you to be a weapon, yet you have betrayed the family. Come over here this instant, or we will detonate the device and let everyone perish with you." Victor let out a sinister chuckle, clutching a quantum crystal that glowed with a dangerous red light. "Your Majesty, look closely. This woman has been a trap since the day she was born. Her bloodline will amplify the curse. Once you are truly united, the entire empire will collapse. Do you still intend to protect her?" Alex didn't answer immediately. He turned his head to look at Elara, who had burst into the room. In that glance, there was worry. There was tenderness, and above all, unshakable resolve. He reached out his hand and said to her in a low voice, "Come here, little one. Come to me." Elara's legs were trembling. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a knife. As she reached his side, Alex immediately pulled her into his embrace, using his body to shield her from any possible attack. That cold yet firm chest nearly caused her to break down. "I will not give her up." Alex's voice boomed through the hall like thunder. "For 300 years, I've watched you so, called nobles and aristocrats turn power and lineage into a series of ugly games. Curses, prophecies, those are just tools you use to control others. Elara isn't a key, nor is she a weapon. She's simply a woman who's been stripped of her right to motherhood by the entire world, and I'm willing to stake everything on her." He suddenly lowered his head and kissed Elara's lips fiercely, right in front of all their enemies. The kiss carried a passion laced with blood and desperation, as if he were trying to swallow her whole. Elara's tears finally fell uncontrollably. Her fingers clung desperately to his collar, her heart churning with emotions she'd never felt before. Fear, emotion, love, and a resolve bordering on self-destruction. Just then, Victor gave a cold laugh and pressed the crystal. The entire hall was instantly engulfed in a blinding red light. Elara's body felt as if it were being pierced by countless red, hot knives at once. The excruciating pain made her scream. She felt her blood burning as the ancient curse fully awoke, attempting to devour the life force of both her and Alex. "Alex, let me go. I'll kill you." She was in so much pain she could barely form a complete sentence, tears mingling with sweat as they streamed down her cheeks. "Shut up." Alex's voice, however, was unusually gentle. He bit into his own wrist, feeding the fresh blood directly into her mouth, while simultaneously activating the ultimate counter, spell hidden within the crown. The cold blood surged into her body, carrying immense power. The two forces collided violently within her, as if trying to tear her to pieces. In that moment, Elara's consciousness began to drift. She saw countless visions, the loneliness of her childhood, locked away in the manor, the cold, calculating schemes of the family elders, happy scenes of ordinary girls holding their children, and Alex's 300 years of solitude. He had waited for her all that time, not to produce an heir, but to find someone who could make him feel alive again. After the pain reached its peak, a strange warmth suddenly surged through her. The curse had not destroyed them. Instead, through the fusion of Alex's bloodline, it began to reverse. Elara's body was no longer a vessel, but had become a true bridge. A heat unlike any she had ever felt flowed through her abdomen. Not a sign of pregnancy, but the awakening of a deeper power. She could sense Alex's memories, his pain, and his love. "Look," Alex growled at the stunned crowd, his voice hoarse with triumph. "This is what you feared. Not destruction, but rebirth. Elara has given me something more precious than a child. She has made me willing to overthrow this entire rotten order for the sake of love." Victor and his father turned pale instantly. They tried to flee, but Alex's guards had already sealed off all exits. At that moment, the battle erupted in full force. Magic and gunfire intertwined, pushing the senses to their limits. Screams, flashes of explosions, the sound of blood splattering on the cold floor. Elara leaned into Alex's embrace, feeling his powerful heartbeat. For the first time, she felt no self-doubt. Instead, she lifted her head, her voice weak yet resolute. "I am no longer poison. I will be with you to break this damned cycle." Fateful turning points always arrive with such cruelty, pushing people to the brink of life and death, testing everything with the most extreme pain. Yet, it is precisely in such fiery trials that we come to understand. True strength does not lie in being flawless, but in having someone willing to protect your imperfections with their very life. This love is far more unbreakable and far more stirring than any bloodline or power. The double doors of the control room slowly closed. The battle outside raged on, but Elara knew the darkest hour had passed. Her union with Alex was no longer merely a forbidden love. It was the beginning of something powerful enough to rewrite the rules of two worlds. Outside the window, the city's neon lights still flickered, as if silently bearing witness to this forbidden romance. The aftermath of the battle subsided slowly, like the receding tide. The lights in the central control room returned to a soft, warm golden hue, and the bloodstains and shards of shattered crystal on the floor glinted with a final, dangerous sheen under the glow. Elara leaned against Alex's chest, her body still trembling slightly. The life and death fusion they had just experienced had sharpened all her senses to an extraordinary degree. His cool body temperature, the deep thud of his heartbeat in his chest, and the faint mingled scent of blood and gunpowder in the air were all etched into her soul with crystal clarity. Victor and the traitorous elders had already been taken away. Elara's father, head of the Thorn Consortium, had chosen to surrender at the last moment. The look in his eyes as he gazed at her shifted from hatred to a complex weariness. "Perhaps we were all wrong," he murmured before being led from the scene. The balance of power within the entire underground empire and the human upper class had been completely rewritten that night. The prophecy device did not bring destruction. Instead, infused with Alex's bloodline, it transformed into a new balancing force. The cursed female bloodlines began to slowly awaken, and the hidden suffering of countless families in the city finally saw a glimmer of hope for liberation. Elara looked up, her gaze meeting Alex's crimson eyes. Those eyes no longer held only possessiveness. They now held a layer of profound tenderness, like the tranquility that follows a baptism by fire. "I thought I really would kill you." Her voice was still hoarse from crying, as her fingers gently traced the dried bloodstains on his trench coat. Alex lowered his head, pressing his forehead against hers, his cool breath brushing her lips. "Fool, I've waited 300 years just for this moment. Those aristocratic conspiracies, political struggles, and bloodline curses, they were all merely tools to bring us together. From now on, no one can define you by infertility anymore. You are my queen, the pillar of this new empire, and the first person who has made me willing to let go of my eternal solitude." He took her hand and led her out of the control room to the palace's highest terrace. The city's nightscape spread out beneath them, neon lights twinkling like stars, and the air after the rain was fresh with a hint of sweetness. Elara leaned against his shoulder. The breeze gently lifted her long hair, tangling it around his fingers. This time, she felt no fear, only a long-lost sense of peace. The days that followed were like a slow yet intense healing process. Alex did not rush to produce an heir. Instead, he guided her step by step in dismantling the shackles that had bound her for 28 years. He mobilized the Empire's resources to thoroughly settle the old scores between the Thorn Consortium and the Pureblood faction, dismantling one by one the forces that had used curses to manipulate power. At the same time, he taught her how to harness the power of her awakened bloodline, not as a vessel, but as an equal partner. For the first time, Elara stood before the conference table, challenging the old rules in front of all the nobles and human representatives. Her voice was soft but firm. "I will no longer be treated as a weapon by anyone. Childbearing is not a woman's only value. Love and companionship, trust and standing shoulder to shoulder, these are the truly unbreakable bonds." In the bedroom at night, the two often fell asleep in each other's arms. Alex would whisper in her ear in a hoarse voice about the loneliness he had endured over the past 300 years, the power games and emotional desolation of those long years. Elara, in turn, would bury her face in his chest, confiding in him the pain of being imprisoned by her family and her secret, shattered dreams of a normal life. Their intimacy was no longer merely passion. It had grown to encompass layer upon layer of tenderness. When his cool hand brushed over her lower abdomen, he no longer said, "I have a way to handle the baby," but instead whispered, "Whether we have one or not, it doesn't change how much I love you. You've already given me the most precious gift, helping you believe again that you are worthy of love." Months later, the city welcomed a new balance agreement. A collaborative project between vampires and humans was launched, and good news began to pour in from those women who had once been cursed. Elara stood on the balcony, watching the celebrating crowd below, her eyes slightly moist. She wasn't pregnant, but she knew that she and Alex had forged a bond deeper than blood, a connection capable of shattering fate and rewriting prophecies. One late night, Alex carried her to bed, his movements gentler than ever before. He kissed every inch of her skin, as if worshipping a lost treasure found again. "Are you still afraid, little one?" he whispered. Elara shook her head, wrapping her arms around his neck of her own accord. Her voice carried a hint of laughter yet remained firm. "I'm not afraid anymore, because I finally understood that true love isn't about fixing flaws, but about making you shine even within them. You've given me that." Their figures entwined before the floor, to ceiling windows, with the city's lights bearing witness from beyond. After the passion subsided, Elara nestled in his arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, and suddenly whispered, "Thank you for not looking at me with pity, but for pulling me into your world with such strength." The cruelty of fate ultimately transformed into the deepest healing. It teaches us that when a woman is stripped of her so-called basic worth by the world, a truly strong partner does not attempt to fix her, but instead helps her redefine her own value through complete devotion, patience, and fighting side by side. This forbidden love not only burned down the old order, but also ignited hope in the hearts of countless people. Love, after all, can transcend blood ties, transcend prophecies, and transcend all man-made shackles. Elara's story has come to a perfect conclusion here. She has grown from a poison meant as a tribute into the queen standing at the pinnacle of the Dark Empire. Those aristocratic conspiracies and racial struggles ultimately became the strongest backdrop for their love. And Alex's smile, which began as the dangerous gaze of a predator, has transformed into a tenderness that blooms solely for her. If you, too, have been moved by this forbidden tale that transcends race and defies destiny, please like, save, and share it with the sisters around you who also yearn for unconditional love. True strength lies in daring to embrace happiness despite our flaws. On our next journey, let's continue to seek out those romantic legends that heal the heart.